Hi, this is Anand here.
Avdesh.
Hi, very good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hello, Anandji.
Hi, Shirin. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, sir. How are you?
So far, so good. Trying to be as normal as we can.
Thank you for joining us in the session today.
It's my pleasure, as always. So, Avdish, how are you doing? Your voice is not coming.
Yes, I think he has some audio problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes,
As good
much
as it
better
can get
now.
in these times. As I
Sorry?
said, as good as it can get in these times. It's good.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Shirin, do we have to share the PPT to you, or I can upload the PPT from my side?
You have already shared a PPT with Shivaji, I think. So he has already shared it with the admin.
Oh, okay. I haven't shared with him yet. Can I share it now?
Yes, I think it will be better if you want to handle the PPT yourself, in which case I'll ask the host to give you the PPT handle.
Perfect. I think that would be ideal.
Handle.
That will be ideal.
I'll just check. I'll just check and let you know.
Sure. So, Avdish, you are based out of Delhi or Kolkata?
No. I'm from Mumbai. I'm based out of Mumbai.
Oh,
And you are based out of?
Bangalore?
Bangalore, okay.
How is the rain situation there?
I mean, as it is, like, if you look at Mumbai rains, I mean, it's as good or as bad as Mumbai rains. I love rain, so no complaints. It's been raining for 2 days. Yeah, it's raining heavily. So
Okay.
streets are getting flooded, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, this is like an added flavor to the situation.
We have insisted. I mean, in fact, this year it hasn't rained as heavily. I mean, Mumbai can rain much heavier. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So, or maybe because lockdown, so we don't know how bad is the situation.
Very true. Very true.
So unlike,
Hi, Saurabh.
hi, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, Saurabh.
Very good afternoon, Anand. I am somebody from New Delhi. I'm not sure if anyone else from New Delhi as well here. After going through a lot of peaks and spikes for COVID, now it is a little better position somehow, touch wood.
That's very nice to hear, Saurabh.
I don't know, by God's grace or suddenly people have realized the awareness and taking all the precautions. I don't know. The numbers are, if possibly if those numbers are true again. The sacrosanctness of numbers itself is a question all the time.
Right.
It looks like Bangalore is facing really tough position these times.
Very bad situation in Bangalore so far. I mean, it's like spreading like wildfire.
I think that was the same with Delhi back in June.
Correct.
More or less every state will have its spike once at least.
Yes.
Every state or every city will see that spike jump, and then everything should possibly come down to normal.
True.
So I guess the virus will decide its own course. Yeah.
Where are you
So-
from, Anand? Where are you based out of?
From Bangalore, Saurabh. From Bangalore.
Bangalore. Oh, okay, okay. Oh.
Sorry, Avnish, you were saying something.
I've been saying, yeah, the virus will decide its own course, I guess. So, yeah, and that's how these are in any pandemic. Okay, well, we may do whatever we want to feel good, but ultimately that's what happens.
Absolutely.
Spanish flu is not an ancient history, right? It's a modern history. So it's
Right,
First
right.
World War, 2018. Okay,
Done.
with much less mobility across the globe, we know what happened then,
Very true.
right? And population density, of course, was 1/3 of what it is today. So with that kind of population density, and saying that, okay, fine, if human distancing is what it takes to stop the virus, we would have had a better luck. I'm sure that that much of rationality did exist then also. We could stop Spanish virus flu, right? With lesser population density, less mobility, and what have you. Yeah,
Very true.
yeah.
I'm just typing to Shivaji, just sending the presentation, so they're asking for it. So just pardon me for a while. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Very good afternoon, Mr. Anil.
Good afternoon, sir. I think
Am I audible
not hear
now?
us.
Yeah,
Yes,
much
yes,
clear.
sir.
Hello. Is the voice okay?
Yes,
Much
sir.
better.
Absolutely fine.
I can't hear you people properly.
Mr. Anil, this is Anand here. Can you hear me now?
Let me see. As long as I am audible, I suppose
Very much.
we're okay. Let me try on my phone. Is that a little better?
Yes, yes, it's much better.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to start or we wait for a while?
Can we wait for 5 more minutes, sir? With your
Okay,
permission?
okay.
Yes, few more attendees to join.
I'll try and see meanwhile if I can set my sound.
Good afternoon, sir. Kindly check your voice and video, sir, one by one. Sir, please check your video and voice, sir.
Hi, is this good? Can we hear?
Yeah. It's
Perfect.
absolutely okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, sir.
Hello, Debu, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, Razan, sir, kindly, sir, check your, sir, sound and video, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yeah, but it's some noise, sir. Just, sir.
I can't hear you people properly. There is some sparking in my system.
Okay, sir. But there is lots of noise, sir.
As long as you can hear me,
Yeah. But we are hearing noise. You just adjust, kindly, sir, adjust your mouthpiece. Sir, it may be.
Debu, I suggest you put all the other settings on
is
mute
that better?
first.
Yeah. I have done that already.
Is that better?
Yes, sir. Right
Yes.
now it's perfect, sir.
Yeah.
We can't see you. Your video, I think, is paused.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yes, sir,
Yes,
we can hear you. We can't see you.
I know I can see my image on the screen. You still can't see me?
No, sir, we cannot see you, sir. You have to put the video mode on. I think your video mode is stopped.
Okay. Now I stopped it.
Yes, sir. Your video is now on, sir.
Okay.
Now we can see you, but you have to lower the camera a bit so that we can see your face, sir.
Is that better?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's sir, absolutely correct, sir.
Okay, tell me when we can start.
Another 2 minutes.
Sure, sure, sure.
So we start. Hello. We can't hear you. Sir, you are on mute. Yes.
Okay.
Honorable speakers and dignitaries, good evening and welcome to this webinar. This is an exclusive session on artificial intelligence and analytics in new age energy business. We are honored to have with us Shri Anil Razdanji, former Secretary for Government of India and Chairman ICC National Expert Committee for Energy. He has been advising and guiding us in holding this webinar today. Indian business definitely realize the importance of IT and analytics, especially in the new normal way of working. There is a huge market in all the regions of the country, especially the front runner states in products ranging from engineering parts, electrical parts, and all sorts of components. This is a small effort by ICC to bring all the stakeholders in this forum. I sincerely thank the sponsors, QNext and Climate Connect. Now I request Shri Anil Razdanji to address us and inaugurate the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serene, and welcome all participants to this, I think, a very futuristic topic that has been chosen for today's discussion, and that is on artificial intelligence and analytics in the new age energy business. We have with us a very well-informed and eminent panel. The experts who will be talking to us, Mr. B.R. Anand, he's the co-founder and CSO of EcoProcess. Mr. Avdesh Kumar, he's the founder and CEO of Q Next World. Mr. Saurabh Srivastav, he's director of Climate Connect Technology. And I think each one of them is from a field which is extremely relevant to the subject that is being taken up today. Well, the discussion would really be centering around 4 issues that have been identified, as you all know. One is the new energy challenges and opportunity. Second is how is India different and why AI has a bigger role in India. Number 3, how AI can help in augmenting collective intelligence from connected information. And number 4, can we run utility scale load serving entities out of the box? At the very outset, you see, we are meeting today in the shadow of this pandemic, which has changed the way we live, the way we work, and the way we control business. Luckily, IT is established in our country. Otherwise, if IT was not there, you can understand the amount of disruption that would have taken place in the transactions, particularly financial transactions, commercial transactions, and even healthcare actually. When we talk of artificial intelligence coming in and analytics, that is an area where we've got to substitute the human being by a process, if not a machine, essentially a process, a thinking machine, a thinking instrument, a thinking device. Now, that device has to substitute a human being. And I would say that to optimize your functions and the availability of your systems and their operation, this 24-hour sentinel can be of immense help. Otherwise, imagine you will have to be working in 3 or 4 shifts. That, I think, is something which we ought to realize. Some countries, I think, are already a little ahead of us. And maybe this is a wake-up call for us to develop our own indigenous talent. If our talent can go abroad and run some of the best systems abroad, why can't we devise a platform and a system for India? Now, the new energy challenges that are there for you are, we want to move towards the renewable systems of energy supply. We also want to switch from fossil fuels in transportation to cleaner transportation, maybe through battery services, through automated trains which would be running, and their scheduling becomes extremely important moment you bring in automation. There is a little debate that India, after all, is surplus in labor. And if we are going to automate functions, whether it will lead to unemployment, do we skill up people? I think the effort has to be that we have to identify the areas and operations where we have to automate, where we have to substitute a better intelligence than ours and a more efficient system which is there round the clock. Now, this is not to say that we want to replace the human being, no. we want to make the system more efficient. And I give you an example of energy efficiency. If every home is to be run in the most efficient manner, every business is to be run in the most efficient manner, or industrial enterprise, we have to optimize our energy use. And increasingly, energy use is electricity use. And if the optimum energy use can be put into operation at the right time, we can probably end up saving on manufacturing and commercial costs. That, I think, is an area that we have to look at. Look at energy efficiency devices at home. Every home can set itself a target that I do not want to consume more than so much energy, and see how I can manage my various operations and optimize those operations. Switch off devices, whether in home or in office or in a factory, so that we can bring down our energy bill. Because more energy use means more emissions. We have to try and see that we optimize this use so that we bring down emissions. Now, how is India different? I've said we have our own challenges. We have to look at it. But then rooftop solar is a huge opportunity that is going to come in. And when we talk of Kusum scheme working in remote areas, rather than have that thousands of, if not lakhs of people who will be contributing to your whole system, I think the most efficient way is to go about through the AI mechanism and through such command and control systems. As I mentioned, you have a rooftop solar system. You're away to work. Now you want that system to keep working even in your absence, though you're away from home. So it's bringing about more efficiency and trying to see how we can use the 24 hours in the day to run our operations in a most efficient manner. A very simple device is your refrigerator, which even people in my generation got to use when we were kids. It automatically switches off when it's cool enough. Now imagine if this simple device was not there. You would have to manually check every time the temperature and keep switching on and off the device. This is just, I'm giving you probably the simplest and crudest example. Then we're talking of how can AI help in augmenting collective intelligence from a connected connected information. Yes, this is what we talked about. And particularly in our distribution systems, in our entities, electricity entities, the most efficient ones are those who know how to run their system most efficiently, take in power when they need to from the cheapest source, keep your antenna open. Where can I get open power? These systems are going to open up in the future. And I've got to scan and search how I can get the best results out of the system, ensure that all my customers are getting 24-hour supply, they're getting light and not lightning. Then how can we run utility scale, load serving utility entities out of the box? Precisely, that is the thing, that you've got to automate your functions. You've got to ensure that you're procuring your power from the best sources, you're deploying your power to the most remunerative sources at that point of time, checking where the demand is arriving, how you can access the system, move across it, and use its idle capacity lying somewhere to either procure power or supply power. And at the same time, ensure that your customer is given the best service, and through your analytics, you are able to arrive at those solutions. Analytics also help in detecting power theft and things like that. This has been on for a while. I will not say more than that. The experts are there, and I would ask our first speakers. I think it will be Mr. B.R. Anand, who is listed on top, to kindly begin his presentation. And at the end, maybe we try and attempt to keep at least half an hour for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anil. I mean, that was a fantastic an introduction to the topic. As you rightly said, technology is the key driver for the whatever that we want to achieve and achieve, multifold level. So you have to give me a minute to upload my presentation. Shireen, I have not got the access to upload my presentation.
Yes, sir. I have given you, sir. You can run your presentation, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So thank you so much, Mr. Anil, and the respected speakers and all the dignitaries and delegates. It's in my honor to represent EcoProcess here to talk about the new technology and the new concept which has been actually adding as a catalyst to the whole ecosystem. So just to give you a little background, so we are typically into energy efficiency, energy financing, renewable energy, audit and consulting, and smart city is our core focus from EcoProcess. So just to give a background of the EcoProcess is predominantly into new age digital technology, where we have been focused on being intelligence behind every city and addressing the global smart cities and communities market. We've been focusing both side, demand side and supply side initiatives, where integrating sustainability as our core offerings. So we've been working as a sustainability partner to multiple organizations at this point in time, which is a key area that I think the most industries are looking forward to associate. We have been providing a comprehensive, customizable, scalable platform to help cities and various other industries to solve socio-economic and environmental problems. That's because we have been able to develop right from the beginning, from the core, that we have been focused on the IoT, AI, machine learning, and deep understanding of our wireless design and connecting solution has helped us to become one of the key smart solution providers. On saying that, what we believe in ourselves is that this is not the only that today's success. It's about continuous innovation, and we have to be being responsible, reliable, and collaborative. And we have to be diverse thinking, open and transparent culture is what we believe in ourselves from the organization level to the bottom of the organization. We have been one thing that we have been able to focus. We have been visited multiple industries at across the region and trying to analyze what exactly is the core problem from each of the sectors, and trying to bring back those learnings and trying to add where we can actually solve from our technology is one of the core quest of ours, and which we have been trying to solve that continuously. As we all know today, our current Indian facility story is completely, as Mr. Anil rightly mentioned, we've been in a very traditional approach at this point in time compared to the matured market. We have seen, inefficient technologies, inefficient motors and VFD usage. We have seen how depleted light and HVAC systems in the industries. We have also seen, the chillers and rundown boilers, which has been there for almost for donkeys years, and still it is trying to optimize. And never been optimized the core, the potential of cogeneration and waste heat recovery process, which has been one of the key drivers for the energy efficiency at this point in time, which my topic will be talking about. as little bit of, like we all are aware, but I still wanted to highlight because this will be a relevant point to, continue our discussion. This is as per the ministry, though it is a pretty much old data, but I wanted to connect with this because we are nowhere near or nowhere enhanced so far. So as we see, there is an enormous potential of 15 to 40% across all sectors where we can save, and this yields to more than 20 billion US dollar, which can actually add to the Indian GDP. We have also seen industries and residential sectors offer the highest saving potential. Mr. Anil very well mentioned in his point that there is a huge scope that we all can come together and actually help not only India, across the globe. Uh, we have also seen that the best practice across the world can be implemented in India, or in Indian practices can be implemented across the world. Uh, as we know that every 1 unit saved is equivalent to 2 units of generation, right? So that's the fundamentals that we have to keep in our mind, whether be it in the residential sector or the industrial sector or any sector in that matter. So what exactly that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we've been able to analyze why industries has not been able to adopt, or why industries has not been able to connect that where there is a huge potential of savings and enhance their productivity, is because of awareness. There's a huge gap in understanding. There is analysis, detailed RO analysis is completely misinterpreted. There is definitely an intervention of government policies which has to be reconsidered in many ways, which can be optimized and catalyzed to all the processes which has been going to be implemented. And also, there is a lot of decision process in the industries, which is in the boardroom. They've been able to fail to take the right decisions, uh, and which is typically because of the top line and bottom line aspects. Now, whenever there is any kind of an intervention, the only question mark that every boardroom is discussed about the capex, and that capex is always been the showstopper so far that I see in every project that it has got a huge potential which has been analyzed. So, as we all know, in India, we have, fortunately, or I would say unfortunately, is still only 150 ESCO companies who are actually been able to cater to such a large audience in the country like ours. That's one thing that I think which is not been right to the if you have to compare to the country to country. So just to in the interest of the audience, the ESCO process is a typical, like we do pre-audit modeling, audit and feasibility, finance package, and installation. So now every detailed process has been taken by the experts as an auditor, will be modeled, and then clearly define the audit and feasibility process, and derive the correct packages that which can industry can adopt. And most importantly, the ESCOs can actually help industries to handle the projects and take a risk as a owner. It's just not that service and deliver aspects. It is about more of an handholding right from beginning to end of the project. So this is how ESCO companies have been able to deliver in the process. Typically, how we actually integrate sustainability is we engage, empower, enhance, and enable. When we engage, we try to understand the industrial process, the modalities of the sector, and also the policies. We able to connect and probably try to help our partners or customers to empower them to take the decisions. And when we actually implement the processes, we enhance their the objectives by implementing the right process, which yields to the right desired results at various touch points. So typically, we've been in the expertise in the sectors like efficiency service. We have been developed few products, And our core integrated technology services is what is helping to enable our partners and customers to adopt the right services. And we've been in the smart city by using IoT as an element. And we also been working hard to build our R&D in the fuel cells and the energy tracking control system, and trying to implement the blockchain in various aspects, working with various global partners and global experts to bring the new cutting edge technologies and cutting edge processes to implement in the country. We analyzed that probably like today the industries are not been able to adopt a system as a energy efficiency processes is simply because there's no proper handholding which we have seen now. There are many services, technology adaptation. There is many, key deliverables from various products and services from the organizations. But what happens is there is an vested interest for each product or services when they actually deliver. But as an ESCO companies, the key motto or objective is that the bottom line success. So our process as energy efficiency as a service is actually been able to cater to a few of our customers and able to showcase our ability. We have been so far developed our unique platform called Rubix. Rubix is a platform which has been able to integrate multiple components, multiple sensors, multiple IoT products, and bring an intelligence to to manage remotely. And also we've been focused on very niche areas, that how do we actually retrofit and scale the implementation process, because there are technologies as vast, right? We cannot adopt every technology and everything at the same time. So when we actually as a service provider or a solution provider, we have been very clear that we focus in remote intelligence and the visual intelligence, which is a deadly combination, which will actually can retrofit various processes and able to enable and empower our industries and customers. So when I mentioned we are always been that we've been thriving to build a scalable remote intelligence. This is purely that what we have seen in the smart city, smart facility, smart retail, and smart safety as the core sectors that which we have been focusing. In some of the technology brings as a core deliverables is the remote monitoring, behavioral recognition, gaze detection, number plate recognition, barcode recognition. So we have some amazing use cases which we have been implementing in a couple of smart cities, and we have also been in a couple of industries which we have also installed, and we've been able to showcase that this new cutting edge technology can actually make everybody's life easier, and also been able to control the situations. I'll give you some of the examples over there. Rubix, as I mentioned, it's our core device level energy management solution platform, where we integrate multiple IoT components and sensors, and we are trying to build even our actuators to engage the multiple processes. And the typical R Rubix, what it does is we have a sensor called Urja. So these sensors actually can able to connect to every device and able to manage machine idle time, sequencing issues, try to resolve undersizing or overloading, and also breakdowns, machine leaks, background consumption. All these things leads to we can actually measure energy wastage, what is the production efficiency or the performance, which can reduce the life of the equipment. So these are the key areas that we're able to analyze and diagnose using our devices, and there are multiple other sensors also there in the industry. So what we have been typically been engaging in the industry is how do we actually become a system integrator perspective and deliver the solutions, rather just that we have one solution, and not just that one solution should able to fit the each of the industry's requirement. So one of the area that we focused is device level management is critical for every process that we adopt in an ESCO process or in any energy efficiency process. So this device level, if we able to connect and able to collect the data, and we've been able to analyze lot more thing, and we've been able to simply by analyzing we can save 5 to 10% cost of the energy. This is typically our working process in the device level energy monitoring. We have a sensors which is a non-invasive technology. Doesn't have to any kind of cutting the wires or anything. We can actually adopt it in a different scenarios, which has got a visualization analytical platform which defines energy wastage, improve production efficiency, and also take care of the predictive maintenance. So our readings and our success story so far is we've been able to lower the cost by 15 to 20% by just monitoring the energy and implementing the right device level tracking. And we have been able to showcase the production efficiency using the Rubik's integrated platform, which has been very cost effective for most of our implementation partners and the services. And we've been able to do a lot of machine learning based anomaly fault detection, and also advanced predictive alerts to avoid downtime. This is some of the key outcomes of the technology implementation so far, and this is an evolution that we can continuously evolve with various data that we collect from the floor level. So what exactly the benefits to our industries? So we can actually detect hourly, daily power consumption tracking at equipment level. We use asset intelligence to unlock hidden savings enabled by our devices and the sensors, which can give a deep production insights and advanced pattern analytics. So with this, we've been able to cater energy savings and also in production efficiency. So there are typical scenarios where by VFD variation, there's production changes. There is energy consumption becomes higher, and there is downtime because of various simple fault of floor level implementation. So with this, we can actually take care of predictive and preventive aspects, and monitor the continuously and real-time tracking. We have been able to give one of the best UI and UX based analytical dashboard, which derives real-time energy levels, and we have been able to give the complete insights, which has been key factor that in the past that there are very few shop floor people used to have data, real-time data, but not every people who are actually a key decision makers have to depend on various ways to collect data. But today thanks to the technology that we've been able to have a real-time data, whether you are remotely present or you are present at the location. So we also been other than the device level, we have come out with our unique AI-based visual intelligence, which we have been able to develop ourselves along with our couple of our core partners across the globe. This intelligence has comes with a lot of processing of image and processing of the videos, which we are able to collect and connect various touch points about the shop floors and at various processing ability. So what happens in our visual ability, we actually capture data at 24/7 capacity, and where the humanly presence cannot be able to track. And with this, we can actually arrive a lot of confidences and concise numbers to derive various processes. These are some of the UI for the maintenance module, which we will be able to help to give real-time data to the key stakeholders. One of the interesting that we've been able to arrive. This was our core ability to derive, because many traditional devices and traditional systems which has been adopted in the industries. Now, how do we cater them? Now, if we cannot immediately change those devices in multiple locations. So what we have analyzed using our visual intelligence, we've been able to, convert analog gauge to a digital gauge using the visual intelligence. So this actually helps, to do a lot of retrofit. And this analysis of data actually derives various outcome, which has been key factor for the processes for the energy efficiency. And also because of the various data that we have been able to collect at various level, one is from the device level, and because of our visual intelligence, we can create a alarm module at various processing, and we also been able to derive different energy modules and arrive exact data which has been able to showcase the results. And typically, while we have been able to analyze, there are just not about the machines or the process is only the factor. There are many ways that the safety of the shop floor people is also critical for the production efficiency and also to reduce energy level detection. So what we've been able to do using our face recognition and the visual recognition intelligence, we've been able to detect various things at the shop floor. Like, for example, people not wearing a gloves or people not wearing a glasses, headgear, footwear, at various this thing at proximity, alerts can be given to the multiple stakeholders, which can actually helps in multiple ways. It can avoid short circuit by they're not using the right safety guards and trying to implement in the shop floors. That will also end up in downtime. These are all very sensitive, but simple but very sensitive. And this is been least considered at the shop floor, at least in Indian scenario. So having this in AI-based visual intelligence can actually help multiple ways that you can actually detect whether even if a person is able to sleep, if he's sleepy or if he's not in the right mood, we can actually analyze the moods of the shop floor, which has been a continuous, is been working for 8 to 12 hour shift, but the productivity will be varying. So these are the key things which can actually help the production efficiency as well. Basis on this, we also been able to integrate, at least that now we can see there are lots of big and medium enterprises trying to adopt command and control center at the shop floor level, at the industry level, to analyze various things. Now, the critical part of our device level management and visual AI intelligence, all this can be integrated to the control and command center and arrive, real time, decision making process at the various touch points, which enables them to take the right decisions. And also, our ability of in those data to in the from an Android and app level data, which actually helps to use the data at various touch points. While we have been able to focus on the efficiency side, on the energy at the industry level, we have been able to focus at the various smart city level as well. You having our street light pedigree efficiency in the automation side. We have built our own smart poles, which we are deploying now in multiple cities like Belagavi, Namchi, Gangtok, Tumakuru, and other cities, and in New Delhi Municipal Corporation. We have been able to develop energy tracking and control system for the street lights, which actually predominantly saves close to around 40% energy for from the streetlight aspects and other various equipments it's been deployed. So our visual intelligence helps doing the automatic number plate recognition. Also, during this COVID time, we've been able to track using face recognition whether people are in section 144 time, how many people have been walked in that particular area, or whether they've been wearing a mask or not. So this actually been able to give a data at the command center of these smart cities, which has helped them to control certain areas during the COVID situation, and it is also ongoing projects. We also been able to develop our energy charging stations, EV charging station, basically for electric vehicles at a very efficient level of EV charging, fast charging stations, which we have been implemented. And this is also using our AI-based technology, so that this will actually help people who have been able to adopt. We've been trying to work with various ESCOMs to implement the various touch points across the country, and this is an ongoing project. And these are some of our installations, which has been energy efficient. Smart poles has been deployed, at various touch points of the countries, places like Namchi. We've been able to help them, because with this one, most of the time it is a low light areas, and most of the time there is a foggy area. These are the time that where we can actually showcase our technologies to bring them the best efficiency. So these are some esteemed clients. So finally, before I end up my presentation, so at EcoProcess, our vision is to co-create wealth for energy users, providers, and entire ecosystem by integrating sustainability is our vision. And that's we've been trying to evolve as an ecosystem player, collaborating with multiple partners across the globe, bring the best technology. And the one of the key aspect that which we are looking forward very strong in the current scenario is that we've been able to collaborate with multiple stakeholders for the ecosystem. In the ecosystem is like financial partner, technology partner, and the knowledge partner, who can actually come together and able to help our industries to bring down the energy cost and also increase their production efficiency. So with that, we've been able to trying to become a most trusted sustainability partner. So that's it from my side, Mr. Anil.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. It's a very informative exposition by you. I just have one suggestion and a thought to you. I mean, having been working in the system,
Yeah.
to my not only grey but white hairs, I can tell you that we are a system that is obsessed with a top-down approach. Whenever we want to develop a smart city, smart systems, we think of the biggest cities. I think a much more practical way would be to begin from the class C cities, so to call, C and B, where things are manageable. We can get the people enthused, and once you are able to show that success in a smaller, manageable space, it can put the larger cities, and I would say those with a lot of hubris about them, to shame. That if this small place could do it, why can't we do it? I mean, in the year 2000, I remember I was in the US, and we went to the city of Portland. We had an important hydro conference there. And that was a city, Portland, on the other coast virtually, where they had an electric tram system running, and I think 95% people would leave their vehicles in the city, outside the city rather, and travel by that electric system and come and collect their vehicles outside and drive out. And there was somebody who was from one of the larger cities like Dallas and New York and all. They were me, and I said, look here, this system, they said, it's putting us to shame. If this place can do it, why can't we? But I think we should try and put these experiments across. in smaller class C cities, as I call them. That is one aspect. The other is human productivity. See, one of the largest enterprises in India, L&T, has devised a system, in fact, last year, probably, where every worker at a site is tagged and they know what he's doing at that moment. Now, if you see in our smaller systems, where people are most of the time not working, now if this productivity linked watch instrument can be put on them, that what are they doing right now? After all, human energy is what you are paying for, or intelligence. Today we are trying to substitute, today's subject is machine, wherever it is. But if we can at the same time optimize human activity and functioning, the biggest beneficiary would be government sector, which I think is probably working to 20 to 30% optimum efficiency, if I mistake not. So if we can get that kind of data and put it in the public domain, that at a given point of time, how many workers in this organization are actually working, or are they just whiling away their time? What is their output, productivity related? So it's just a thought, because we have a lot of people with the AI on the audience today. This struck me that human productivity in India is one of the lowest. We want to use government as just not only an employment machinery, but something which doles out wages. And there's a very small measure of productivity. And the little spark came out in the year 1976, as far as I remember. Mr. T.A. Pai was the industries minister, and I was working in the industries department in Haryana at that time. And he tried to put across this mission of productivity. And we were all enthused. But then things fell apart. So I would leave it with that thought. And I think we move on to the next speaker, Mr. Avdesh Kumar. He's founder and CEO of Q Next World. And I think Avdesh.
Good afternoon, eminent panel, honorable speaker. So, I'm sure that we'll emerge stronger from this pandemic, and maybe this will bring some pandemic shift at the way we look at various things and various challenges. Now, of course, with a positive mindset and looking for the best out of it. So, if I could be made the presenter, I guess, be able to share.
Yes, sir. I am providing you, sir. Just a minute, sir. Yes, sir. Check it, sir.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome, sir.
Let's see. So, are we able to see the presentations? Just wanted to confirm. So, if you're all
Yes, sir.
perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you. Now, so there was a book by Alvin Toffler in the late 90s, which talked about the three waves, right? Which is basically nothing profound in it. It mostly talks about different ages of the civilization, how we, from Stone Age to agricultural age to industrial age, and then information age, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at India, we pretty much very interesting, because here is a nation which has got all the waves coexisting. So you have people doing agriculture the way it was done way back. So of course, you can say that they're still in the agricultural age. On the other hand, we do have sectors which are beyond information, already talking about, and have heavily adopted machine learning or AI. So a very interesting space where you have all kind of conflicting waves existing simultaneously. Now, just extrapolating it to utilities, or if you look at utilities, again, it's a mixed bag. Now you have utilities which still collecting even the load data at different KV stations by making a call. Not in all utilities, but there are some. Okay. On the other hand, we do have utilities which already has adopted, if not what could be called the state of the art, but definitely have adopted enough IT solutions to be able to monitor the systems more efficiently than most of the discoms. So it's a mixed bag. So that makes it very, very interesting. At the same time, creates huge amount of opportunity for all stakeholders. Now, is it that the discounts, which are, for example, certain discounts which still have struggling to have all the right kind of data, is it that they cannot benefit? Probably they can also benefit from. The advantage of the new age technology is that it is not what we call instrument heavy, and we'll see why we say so, why it's not instrument heavy. And there are alternate sources of data you can leverage until you have all kind of right instrument there in the network. So many opportunities. Now, India is different also because of the kind of energy mix, both on the demand and the supply side that we have, which creates huge amount of opportunities. At the same time, there's challenges. Now, if you look at, for example, any developed world, where from most of the technologies are adopted, unfortunately, in the developing world or in most part of the world, we simply take their solutions and try to adhere. Works fine for machines, but not so much when we talk about certain soft technologies. Now, India's irrigation load, which is predominantly agri-driven, okay, is as high as, it's almost equivalent to what is industrial scale demand. Unlike US, which has about 2%, Australia, a little higher, about 8%, India, for some of this state is more than 22%. And in seasons, it can go up to 40%. And this is one of the most volatile of all demand, more than household consumption. Now, this demand can hit you and disappear. So you're talking about thousands of megawatts hitting in, and with a little bit of change in the weather conditions, which often talking about rainfalls, very hard to predict. So suddenly the load disappears. And then subsequently, how the load will come back has its own nuances depending on where the event took place. So context is important. So what happens basically, and that also creates a huge opportunity, right? Because we know that we need irrigation load when there's actually there's a sunshine. So that is fantastic for going renewable, and particularly solar, because it's a perfect fit for given the nature of the demand and the nature of the supply both. So that's on the demand mix. So we have a very interesting mix, and which creates opportunities, of course, challenges. So far, we have seen the challenges. We haven't really leveraged the opportunity. Now, we'll keep moving between a decade later and now. Now, when we talk about adopting any technology, it has to have a self-life. And we must look into the future, because energy is not something where you can plan for 1 year. Most of it are capex heavy. And secondly, I mean, you cannot have utilities changing, it's morphing into new shapes every other day. I mean, unfortunately, cannot be that nimble. So if you look at the two sources of demand that we will see as a nation, so of course, there was a large part of India which is still struggling to meet 24/7 power, though we have been trying. So the nature of demand that is going there is different, emerging is different. You have irrigation load, and then you have rural load, which starts with lighting, and subsequently you'll have other demand as the consumer is in that part of the world will progress with time. There is a very interesting thing which is happening on the urban side of the load, and that's very interesting, and we call it new energy. Now, particularly after COVID, so whether automation drive is not just at the institutional scale, it's also at the individual household. So, for example, if you look at a city like Mumbai, where household depends a lot on maids and so on and so forth, now all of a sudden, because of this human distancing that one has to maintain, unfortunately, because of this pandemic, people are moving to, for example, or some are thinking, some have already moved to things like Roomba, which is a robot. Now, so when you look at the new wave of urban load, that is very interesting to look at, because these are mainly going to come from appliances. I'm assuming that the current urban load is already saturated on certain kind of standard appliances, which has been the traditional appliances, for example, with your cooling, refrigeration needs, or your washing needs, and so on and so forth. The new load would be a different kind of appliances. You're talking about robots, for example. So Roomba, which cleans your house, is a robot. Now, subsequently, when you talk about these electric cars, which is around the corner, these loads are pluggable loads, and these are two-way loads. So they can also in a way, they're local moving storage devices. So as and when they're plugged in, they can pump in power. At the same time, they can also consume power to store in the batteries that they have, which is locally. For example, a laptop, if you look at a Pro, that can light up 7 bulbs in a household for 2 hours. So that is how powerful these storages are. Those are which are very micro in nature, but that is floating all over the place, right? It's everywhere. Now, this new load is very interesting from 2 perspectives. Firstly, these are renewable friendly because you can charge them whenever energy is available and consume it whenever you wish. And also because of if you look at the energy uses over time, that itself is changing so for the same requirement, which was a commute, was earlier on fossil fuel, now it's electric. So overall energy consumption is the same, just that or may come down, but just that the form in which you're consuming that energy is changing. So that will have a profound impact on all the distributors and of course the generators. And will have its own impact on how the business models are likely to emerge out of it. So for example, some of the business model which is already reality in some of the smaller countries, these automobiles which are electric in nature, and these are pluggable, that is, if there's enough charge, you can actually pump into the local grid. And if there's not enough charge, of course, then you're drawing power from the grid. So in a way, instead of having a centralized storage, you have these distributed assets, which are actually becomes an asset for the true sense, even for the consumer, because you get credit for whenever you allow your charged battery to be pumped into the grid, right? And vice versa. Of course, all of these will happen if you have, of course, IoT has got a role to play, and then of course on top of it you have ML and AI. But what is interesting is that with these kind of things happening, India is why India is very in an interesting state. You will see both kind of the world. You will see this new urban load, which and at a scale which is much higher than some of the more advanced smaller countries. So, for example, if I aggregate Mumbai, Kolkata, Mumbai, Delhi, and some of, say, Karnataka, Bangalore, I mean, if you add these 3 mega cities itself, that is bigger than many European nations in terms of density of the population and total numbers of consumers. Now, so India creates an opportunity for experimenting and developing these kind of technologies, which works across the wave. So what I mean by wave, basically all these 3 different era that coexist. So which basically means is that there's an opportunity to develop a solution, not just for the emerging market, more developed market, as well as all the other emerging market, which are which are at the same stage as we are, and some of the nations which are far behind India. Okay, India is ahead in many terms as far as technology goes. So India should be, and ideally, the breeding ground for these kind of technologies, which the world must adopt. And we can make that happen if there's the right kind of a push. So it's a huge opportunity for India because you have the both mixed. So if something works in India, it will work anywhere with a breeze. And another, of course, this is more obvious, which one was basically how the demand mix is likely to change going forward. And of course, as far as the RE generation mix is going, we already know what is happening. Solar has taken off. It is no more a virtuous source of power. It has become viable, and adoption is not a challenge. But it brings some challenges, more from when we talk about these behind the meter solar arrays. What that does is basically making both the demand and supply invisible. And so in isolation, they may not be significant, but when you aggregate them, you're talking about hundreds of kilowatts. Now, with the kind of renewable push we have, of course, the grid code is going to get more and more stringent, and which has already happened, which basically means that we have to run our systems with higher efficiency, higher precision, which basically would mean to be able to forecast a lot of things with precision. Now, how would you do that when you don't even know how much we are generating and how much we are consuming? So all of a sudden, intelligence will start failing when we start realizing that, oh, what has happened with the cloud cover? Is it that the demand goes up? Probably not. It's just that some of the generation are under the cloud cover, which were not visible. So unlike these megawatt power plants, which necessarily come under the grid purview, and you have the schedule coming in, and you have real-time data coming in. Now these behind-the-meter arrays, what you get from those meters are the net consumptions. We don't really know how much is actually getting generated, is actually sinking at any given point in time. So now in this new world, now we are saying that any part of the surface of the Earth can be an injection point or a draw point. Okay, and do we know how much at any given point in time any part of the surface is injecting or drawing from the grid? Is it possible? Just think. So now, unless we make every kilowatt count, we cannot talk about efficiency. So can we count every kilowatt, be it on the generation side or be it on the consumption side, that is injection and sink? Megawatts, understood, well understood. There has been tremendous amount of success both on managing them efficiently, so there's nothing new there. But when we talk about behind the meter arrays, we still have a challenge. We don't know how much at any given point in time is getting injected or how much is sinking into the system, how much is getting injected into the system. Now, can we make them visible? And that's what we worry about a lot. So making every kilowatt visible and augmenting them and ensuring that we are able to generate intelligence, which is as precise as it can get. So there are two challenges that we have. The one is because of the shift in the energy mix itself on the generation side, which creates these invisible demand and supply, not to worry about these mega power plants, because though it has got its own inherent risk, but more about how to make every kilowatt count. Because when you're talking about a grid code, which asks for meeting utilities deviation of not more than 200 megawatt with a load of, say, for example, 22,000 megawatt, for example, if I talk about Maharashtra, you're talking about 1% deviance. That is all, it's not prediction, it's all like knowing what is going to be your demand if you want to meet, and the generation both, if you want to meet that deviation criteria that you have, right? So it's almost like we don't know which one is the forecast, which one is the reality. And so you're saying, okay, fine, can we tame these volatilities and somehow achieve that efficiency? So of course, all these code comes in, and of course, then people will learn helter-skelter. Somehow they have to manage the penalties and blah blah. So that is a regulatory mechanism to bring in somehow efficiency. But ultimately, we have to resource our own people appropriately with right kind of technology and tools to ensure that they're able to manage these challenges, given that we do indeed have challenges. Now, if I look at, for example, if I aggregate all of these behind-the-meter areas of solar, Maharashtra itself will be more than about 400 megawatt if you add them up. And you're talking about not knowing how much that is generating, but then I have to meet that deviation of 100 or 200 megawatt plus minus as far as utilities are concerned for their load management. So there are challenges and there are solutions. And there are opportunities because if you have these solutions developed in India with so much of diversity, both in terms of weather as well as in the nature of demand mix, that solution would work globally. And some of these challenges are global challenges, not just Indian challenges. And that's where this thought comes from. So every surface on Earth, every part of the surface of the Earth, in today's term, is an potential injection and roll point. It's only going to become more and more so as we go going forward. And one of the interesting things we have is, of course, now the alternate sources of data, which can be leveraged not just to kind of understand the current system, but also the system of the future can benefit a lot from these alternate source of data. So when we talk about, say, for example, satellite data and energy, the first thing which comes out, the image which hits us, is typically the night image, because that gives you a fantastic map of how these urban centers, or for that matter, how the different residential or the habitation are concentrated or distributed across the nation. So pretty much tells you a lot about load centers. But then there are other load centers which are not very well understood, which is, for example, your agri-load centers. Now, energy, when you look at utility scale load serving entities, they need to understand across wide areas what is happening, because each of these will have a butterfly effect. So it is not, for example, if there's a rainfall in one area, it affects your whole system, not just that local area, right? Because it has impact on voltage and VAR. And it can create a chaos. So can you know it, and what would be the impact of such an event? Forget about knowing that event in advance. So do we know, for example, if there's a rainfall in a particular area, how the impact will get demanded? So if what means is that, okay, fine, my weather forecast could have been poor because rain forecast is not all that easy, to be honest, for a nation like India. Now, but then what if I know that, okay, fine, rainfall has happened? Now, what shall I do? Of course, the other things goes without saying that, of course, one should try to forecast it, but nevertheless. Now, is there a way to know where my load centers are? So when we talk about the rural demand, apart from your lighting and some of the cooling demand, blah, blah, most of it is going to be your agri-led irrigation demand, which is significant, it's industrial scale. Now, the point is, do we have a visibility? So if you look at even the most advanced utilities in India, what they would be doing in the name of these, at best, they would have separated the agri feeders. So for example, if I look at Gujarat, they would have separate feeders for agri load, by and large. Okay, some of the states may not even have separated agri feeders, but nevertheless, nobody knows what is the actual demand on the ground. So if that disappears, what is going to be the impact? So invariably, if you look at the performances of these discoms, even the best of the discoms suffer a lot during cropping season purely because of the volatile demand. So they have been able to handle, I would say, the urban load very well. They have been able to understand industrial load, which is the simplest of the load, or the commercial load. Agri load becomes a puzzle. It remains a puzzle for them, purely because it's distributed and also very volatile. So even if you know when it disappears all of a sudden, and it disappears in volume, because typically the load from the whole cluster will disappear as and when the weather changes. And the point is, can we know each of these component which contributes to my load? The answer is yes. And this is what we tend to do. We tend to map every part of the surface of the earth, and we convert them into signatures of all kind, including what we call energy signature, more in terms of the sink and the injection into the systems. From the system, injection into the system, allowing for any such polygons in a way can potentially be both injection and sink point. So for example, if we detect a panel, we know that, okay, fine, it's the injection point. If we detect a crop, and the land is irrigated, because the land, for example, the demand for can come from irrigated land, not a rain-fed land, right? Because rain-fed, you don't have irrigation facility where the demand is going to come from. So if you identify each of these, then we are able to aggregate all of that data and derive intelligence out of it, which is much richer and actionable. So we know immediately that, okay, hey, you know what? In this cluster, demand is going to crash, and this will be the impact on it, and subsequently, what is going to be the impact on every leg of the process, including your intraday schedule revisions and so on and so forth, trading decisions, and so on and so forth. Right? So what we're saying is that without having meters, we are able to impute. So without any hardware, can we impute demand and generation at a very granular level? So overlaying what the signature of the surface, and of course, the weather data on top. So critical components are ability to create signatures for every tile, as we call it, and overlaying it with high density weather data. Now, do we have weather stations? Again, no. Do we need to have weather stations everywhere? Answer is no. So even today, we do have, for India, from certain sources, which many people don't consume, but it's available at weather data available at 3 square kilometer grid. So that is 3 by 3 square kilometer, you have weather data available, which is reliable, which can potentially be used. And if you look at the cost of it, it's nothing, it's peanuts. So where, what, and when is extremely critical for energy. You have to have a context to data, otherwise it does not yield the kind of, that intelligence does not mean much, and the actionable out of it are always tricky. So just the inner sync and so ultimately what happens, you have these varied sources of data And when we talk about, the honorable speaker spoke about collective intelligence from connected infrastructure. Now, nothing is more apt for energy, which is highly connected. And in fact, to be honest, if you think of it, energy sector has been one of the oldest adopter of IoT. So energy meters are IoT. I mean, there has been some form of the meter or the other. You have generation, you have transmission, and you have distribution. All these legs are connected. Person starts at some place at the speed of light, a bulb lit up. So the infrastructure was already connected, and then we put in some systems on top of it to take certain measures and make it available in real time, and we had SCADA. So as far as the system goes, we have collective data coming in from every component of the system. And then you augment it with some of the alternate data sources. Alternate data sources are extremely critical to give two things. One is wide area this thing and context to the data. Because, for example, a weather change in different part of my utility will not have the same impact. And it's even more so important for those with varied demand mix. So, for example, if I talk about Tata Powers of the world, which is mostly in Delhi, or say BSES Yamuna Rajdhani, they may not have these challenges, mostly urban load, which is a much smaller beast to handle, as opposed to if I talk about larger scale, wide area utilities with all kind of load, including these irrigation load, which is a huge opportunity, at the same time challenges. So how do you augment all that intelligence, all that first data, and then ensure that the augmented intelligence from your own infrastructure plus these alternate sources goes into the system, so comes back with intelligence which are actionable and precise and efficient. So, for example, you don't want a system which runs on very high accuracy, but all of a sudden you have huge error. Okay, that is more chaotic than having a system which is consistently performing at a particular efficiency. And if you look at discoms, so far there's a lot of investment which has gone in. For example, in the name of APDRP program that we had, or for that matter, augmenting the distribution network, trying to bring in efficiencies, line losses, and so on and so forth. Of course, we have challenges on LT cables where all of these are a lot more challenging to control. But nevertheless, if you look at the total cost of load serving utility in India, more than 85% is energy procurement, right? So when you talk about 85% and 15% is everything else, including your distribution network, the maintenance, and blah, blah, transformers, and so on and so forth. That is roughly about 15 to 16%. So the large part of the expenditure is on procurement, energy procurement. So any efficiency gain that you're talking about on the distribution side, if that gains come from how you manage that 85% of your budget, will have huge impact. And the most interestingly, the last megawatt power is the most expensive. So any megawatt impact that you bring in that last megawatt, okay, will have a threefold impact on the overall, in terms of threefold impact on the cost. So every last megawatt, most expensive megawatt, you save on that, you will have 3 times the benefit of what you saved, roughly. So far, if you look at it, most of the utilities, of course, are handling that through merit order. Now, the only challenge is that merit order is no more deterministic. So gone are the days. So and that is why even today they would manage. So they will have these merit order that, okay, fine, this is my most expensive power, and this is my least expensive source of power through these PPAs that I might have, which will have 2-part tariff, typically fixed and variable. And then you'll have a merit order in which you'll manage your requirement of the end customers, which is like all you, me, and industries and agriculture. The challenge is that now that merit order is stochastic. Why is it stochastic? Because, I mean, you cannot just look at market as an alternate, as a source which is on need basis. It is not part, it's integrated, no, it's part of integrated system. It is actually a source of power, and it allows you to aggregate power from all over, wherever it is available, at the cheapest possible price. On the other hand, you have renewal. So renewal also asks for certain ramping capacities to ensure that, given the intermittent nature of the renewal, I mean, as and when it goes on, am I able to ramp up? So now each of these makes your merit order a little more volatile, and that is what we call stochastic. So your first is your source of power itself is no more static. Market does provide opportunity. As and when that opportunity is cheaper than my marginal cost of power from other sources, I must leverage that, because at the end of the day, as an efficient distributor, my role is I'm responsible for meeting my end customer load at a least price. At the same time, I also need to ensure that I'm able to harness all my renewable assets, okay, not at the cost of running into surplus or all of a sudden efficiencies, taking or ramping up capacities which are hugely expensive. So there has to be, and given the size of the system, if somebody tries to look at all of these parameters manually, I mean, tough luck. And even, and it's well proven that as far as certain things goes, for example, forecasting, machine learning has a better luck than humans, purely because we cannot process that much of information in real time. And unlike any other sector, when you think of energy, as we said, electricity travels at the speed of light. So your response times are limited. And so it cannot be a bunch of people doing these kind of models or analytics, whatever we call it, and then trying to deploy it. Okay, it'll be too late. It has to be done continuously. It has to keep learning from the data and keep churning out intelligence, which feeds into different processes. And then that process in itself brings out what is the optimized decisions, and then fed into the alternate system wherever that intelligence has to go. For example, be it for trading or your schedule management or your ramp up, ramp downs, intraday, day ahead, what have you. That's how one can also achieve what we call a utility running out of the box. So now, if you think of it, it's nothing but a portfolio management of problem with a lot of noise, and you have huge amount of, and you have a lot of invisibles that you have to make them visible, able to cater to the end customer's load most efficiently. And this one can even call a virtual power plant, because it is able to leverage all available sources, including secondary sources. What I mean by secondary sources, because of course we have corridor constraints, which does not always allow power to flow from one area to another. But with all those constraints, at any given point in time, there always could be potential available power, which could be secondary source, could be cheaper than my own source. So why shall not I leverage that? All of these are available in some form or the other, but just that manually it's impossible to scan through all those sources which are available and pick the best for you. And that's where these kind of systems comes in and has got a role to play. So these are typically the building blocks. So for example, if you want to leverage stochastic sources like market to bring down the cost of meeting that last megawatt load, of course, one also has to be, the system has to be smart enough to be able to ensure that you're able to get those power with certain degree of confidence, because otherwise, if you rely on market and you don't get those power, then you are talking about either running in deficit or surplus. You cannot have power cuts. We have to have 24/7 supply. We must honor that. So how do you manage? And then comes the new wave, which has been talked a lot about, but some of the key aspects always remain untouched because some of those are sensitive. But nevertheless, I'll touch upon those aspects as well. Those sensitive, but so when we talk about smart meters, what is it that is typically sold? Efficiencies, collections. Okay, your collection efficiency will improve by such and such amount and blah, blah, blah. Now, what the smart meter actually does, it brings a paradigm shift in the whole business model. And it's more about how do we see that and how do we leverage that as an opportunity. If you look at smart meters with continuous collection of data, so it gives you a complete understanding of the pattern of every individual household where you have these smart meters. Now, every appliance uses, as the honorable speaker earlier said, for example, about the refrigerator, okay, it's not always consuming power, right? So when the ambience is maintained, it cuts off. Again, when there's a need, it's switch on. Similarly, your ACs, when the ambience temperature is maintained, the compressor gets cut off. It's not drawing enough power, very little power. And then again, ambient temperature again is not up to optimal, again, compressor will kick in. So, or for that matter, washing machine, it has got a cycle. So you first is a pumping load, so you pump in water. Then you have drum load, which is moving, and finally you have that drum spinning, which towards the end cycle of it. Now, each of these cycles consumes different amount of energy, and it has got a signature. So if I have continuous data coming in from a consumer, you can pretty much imagine the richness of that data. So far we talk about how it brings efficiency. Let's talk about what kind of business opportunities lies there. We know your gut, literally, with this smart meter, and that is why I said it's sensitive. So I'll just do with this data and how rich is this data. Now, if you look at Facebook, Google, they make a lot of, so their main asset is data, which they leverage to give various services to different stakeholders in the name of advertisement, marketing campaigns, and so on and so forth. What is the data that they got? Very limited. Now let's see what is with smart meter. What is the kind of data utilities have? So they know your minute by minute, in fact, second by second, microsecond load. You can decompose that load into the kind of appliances which is getting used at the household end. Okay, so washing machine, your another appliances, these pluggable plug-in or plug-out loads, you can detect everything which is running at that behind that meter, what that appliance is, when that gets switched on, when does it get switched off, purely by decomposing that load pattern into individual things. And it can be easily achieved. Again, you have ML at play. Now, what this does, it reveals, and then of course, one of the purpose of having a smart meter is that you should have optimal, for example, all those demand side management, which typically people will talk about. Every utility will say of and how they're going to leverage this for demand side offers to the customer, bring them incentives to move their demand so that their load can, so that the peak can be managed better, or for that matter, you can shift demands of these demand outlets when there's availability. But nevertheless, there is other side of it. When you run these campaigns, you have responses. You give price offers, your responses. You can pretty much understand everything which is a gold mine for any marketing or brand guy. So you're able to identify, firstly, of course, what are kind of appliances they're using. By looking at these appliances, you can also understand what is the status of these appliances. Are they running efficiently, or we see some anomaly? So that tells you that there's something wrong with the appliances. So all of a sudden, there's an obvious opportunity of aggregating all the proactive maintenance at the end household appliances which are getting used. So you become the aggregator, or you're not doing it anything, but just leveraging that data, you become the aggregator of all these services. Okay, you become the aggregator of appliances because you know that, okay, fine, whose appliance is in what condition, whether it needs to be changed or it can potentially be repaired. Okay, by looking at the load pattern. So you not only that, you know everything about that customer. So I mean, if someone's energy consumption are always known, so that itself is a huge amount. So that tells you the purchasing power. But nevertheless, you know who are the customer, who are aware, who adopt things early, who is a value seeker. So for example, who actually, if somebody responds to my demand side offer, is a value seeker. There are guys who are innovators, so they innovate and find ways and means to actually get paid by the smart meters by saving on energy cost. Now, there are guys who are price seekers, so as and when you give any offer, they'll jump on it and they'll move everything there. And there are some who don't miss out on any opportunity wherever they have potential to save energy cost. Okay, and they're convenience seekers who don't care. They look for their convenience. Okay, convenience is utmost to them. Okay, they don't care. They may not be the most energy efficient, but that's the reality. So you have all of these guys. So on one hand, certain obvious use cases emerges that who could be that potential aggregator of all the appliances and proactive maintenance, probably the discom, because they own this data, they should be doing it. On the other hand, you have this profiling of the customers, which can be masked. So with maintaining all privacy that one is supposed to maintain, you are actually able to get what we call the barcode of every household. So you know that what that household is all about and what is the behavior of that household. And none of these could have been done earlier because of the amount of data that you're talking about being mined here is humongous. And again, given the density of the population and hence the number of meters per square kilometer, India will beat many nations hands down, as and when these are realities. So what that does, I mean, and per capita energy consumption for India is much lower than many developed nations. Okay, with that, if you are able to showcase these kind of system which can extract this kind of intelligence, because of the sheer diversity for any machine learning, diversity of data is important. Okay, and so for such things, the best experimental grounds are the systems where you have a lot of noise, a lot of diversity. So you'll have people who are using different kind of appliances from different ages. So some people, they keep running forever. Okay, and then there are people who keep changing their appliances and keep moving to smarter appliances. Okay, you see all these kind of nice in a nation like India. And that is fantastic for machine learning or AI, because as of now, at least, the AI or the ML is based on reduced form learning. So what I mean by that, they learn from data. So unless you see these kind of diversity, you cannot predict outcomes under all kind of noisy conditions. And because of the diversity in the data itself, it allows you to have a much richer platform, which has ability to learn a lot more than if I deploy such certain system, for example, in Norway or Denmark. I mean, I'll have limited learning because diversity is less. Systems are too good. There's no noise. Customer diversity is less. I'll know about limited device. I'll not know about all device. Now we develop this system for India. You can deploy this platform in a country like Norway and in Ghana. That is the scale that we're talking about. And so no wonder, for example, wherever you need diversity, even the best of the breed actually end up using India for experiment. For example, I don't know how many of you know that, but Google, for their healthcare diagnostics, are using India as an experiment ground, because I mean, you know what, a lot of people do fall sick. We have high density of population. You get to see different kind of symptoms and disease. Okay, and that is what you need for any AI or ML based platforms. So, and that's true for energy. So if you have a system which works here, okay, and the fact that we're any which was low cost, and if you could give the kind of quality we're talking about at such low cost, it's a huge opportunity. You can simply change the way we earn.
Desh, how much time would you have? Because we have another speaker and maybe some questions.
Yeah, I'm just almost done, sir.
So another 2 minutes?
Another 2 minutes, not
2 minutes I'll also take. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is what we have already touched upon. So the paradigm shift in the business model of the distribution itself. So new business model emerges. So what it basically means is that maybe there's a way to look at these initiatives as an OPEX model, not just a CAPEX model. Because there are opportunities. If you could see that and leverage that, actually you can have OPEX model out of it. So that's the end of it. In fact, I didn't realize I was actually at the end of my presentation. So what it is doing basically is disrupting the whole energy mix, both on the generation side as well as on the demand side. And it's creating new market mechanism and pricing, and also opportunities of new businesses. So on one hand, you can think of running discoms out of the box, leveraging technologies. On the other hand, with these new data sources, it creates new business opportunities like never before. Okay, so it's all about recognizing those. And then even if the discoms may not have the wherewithal to take the CAPEX, there is an OPEX model that you can leverage. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present what we have. So any questions?
Avdesh, I think that was a very fascinating talk you gave us. In fact, it could be a whole subject for a day. And maybe we'll come down to the smaller things as you're prying into people's homes. We'll start and pry into your minds also.
Right.
But I think, you see, what you mentioned is brought out 2-3 things to me. Maybe you can think over, and when we have the next sessions.
Sure.
One is, you see this increasing domestic demand, this COVID-like situation, and once we get used to working from home, and as you rightly said, that the domestic load in the electricity sector is going to go up as compared to probably the commercial load, if not the industrial load.
Right.
Of course, our tariff setting is very distorted, and so far the domestic sector has had the lowest tariff.
Very
so
right.
This is the sector that is going to, demand is going to go up and the commercial is going to come down. It certainly calls for a tariff resetting formula. and that is that we need to probably look at not subsidizing the other sectors, and each sector should be able to carry a uniform tariff, so to say, across. That's the learning, I think, which we will be able to show.
Yes, sir. In fact, you have hit the nail.
The other point, I just raise two other points with you. One is, you see, this business of, I think we have to have a concept of a dynamic tariff.
Yeah.
Because if you have contracted a certain load, and you have procured power for that load and that pattern of load. Now, as you're getting into micromanagement, so to say, of the electricity sector, we will, I think, need to go into micromanagement of the tariff regime also.
Precisely. Yeah.
Because I mean, remember way back in 1998-99, this availability-based tariff regime. In fact, I was handling the subject that time as the Joint Secretary in the Power Ministry.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. It's a very interesting topic.
I mean, 22 years back. And we used to have frequency excursions of 2 to 3 to 4 even.
Wow.
Now, to bring it down, and the whole trigger came about because the loan from the ADB was linked to availability-based tariff. And that's how I took that opportunity and said, go ahead, we'll use this as an excuse to
fantastic. Wow. Yes.
tighten the system.
Yeah.
So we would, you see, it's much, we used to compare it to a human system. I think that is what you have to explain. Earlier, you went to a hospital, he only measured your temperature.
Right.
At best, your blood pressure. Now you've got this whole range of tests and parameters.
Right.
It's not two parameters which decide the state of your health. All these parameters that you were talking about today, they will all come into tariff setting, I think, in times to come.
Right. Very right.
And we will have to bring in this thing. And I think, first and foremost, again, repeat that demand has to be stated and the flow of demand, because the person has to procure it.
Right.
And its procurement is going to be at a price. As you narrow the band and tighten the thing and try to get lower power, so this is a certain thing. Now, you talked very interestingly of DISCOM load management on the agriculture sector. That is the real challenge. And I keep saying that when you want to privatize, you have to have a mix. You can't say only the urban ones to be given to the private sector and the agriculture is left with the public sector. You have to have that mix. That will happen. But you raised a very interesting thing, and that is, what are the inputs? If you need to do actually forecasting the inputs. One is basically farmer needs water. So it's water demand. And how do you measure water demand? Nowhere so far in the analytics I find that they are measuring soil moisture content.
Very right, sir.
As an input. I mean, sorry, you're all professionals. But
very right.
What is measuring soil moisture content? Because that is where, that is the demand.
That is the demand. You're right. So right. Yes.
Soil water, this moisture content, rainfall prediction.
Yeah.
Then you see wind factor.
Yeah.
Because that's the evaporation factor.
Yeah.
So these, I think, and the crop you rightly mentioned, I mean, pomegranate and grape somewhere else, and maybe somebody's got paddy or something else. If he's able to work out an algorithm and find out how is his demand going to work out. This kind of thing, I think, thank you very much for this very fascinating talk, but it, I think, calls for a whole session. And maybe when we have our DISCOM awards function at the end of the year, we will have a session of this. Thank you very much. And I think Saurabh has been sweating, practicing, probably waiting for the track to be empty. Saurabh, please come online and go ahead. You're the last speaker for the day. You're Director of the Climate Control Connect Technologies. Saurabh, go ahead with your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure indeed to have a chance to speak out here. And thanks to Avdesh as well for such an elaborate, comprehensive presentation covering
Pleasure,
several
man.
important aspects. May I request for my presentation to be shared?
Yes, sir. I have given you, sir. You just run your presentation.
Okay. I hope that's visible.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Avdesh has mostly covered the most important segment of the whole ecosystem, which is the distribution company. I personally believe once we solve the equation of a distribution company, I think a lot of the other stakeholders are linked to that. Of course, tons of payments related for the generators from a distribution company, and then the banks who are connected to the power generators. So this basically, completes the whole financial cycle as well for the ecosystem. So pulling up the discoms is definitely of a very high importance at the moment, wherein the technology has to play its role. I think I personally, let's just first talk about artificial intelligence and analytics, which is the buzzword these days. I mean, artificial intelligence goes around with something which has the ability to self-learn. That is something we all know about. Its lot of applications. But what is the need of the hour at the moment is more of a cognitive decision making, the enablement of the machines or all the artificial machine learning systems that we talk about. I mean, that should just not become another automated system to process the data and show a dashboard or something. I think that's one part of the solution, providing the solution. But the next part is the ability to make the decision within the stipulated time and making the right decision within the stipulated time. I think that is where the cognitive function of machine learning or artificial intelligence or neural networking, that kind of a theory comes into place. That being said, I think energy sector is the perfect domain for the application of machine learning AI-based analytics. That's because when we talk about data related to energy sector, that's voluminous, enormous amount of data, which was rightly pointed out by Avdesh as well. I think once we go to the customer level data or the meter level data and load profiling at the meter level, I think there's lots and lots of data that is being processed, which is kind of next to impossible from any manual-based system or any Excel-based system. It has to be driven from from the big data or Hadoop analytics to process that kind of data and give the judgment at the right time within the right time frame. Moving ahead, there's a paradigm shift that we have always been observing, be it the computing sector, be it the telecom sector, and now let's talk about the power sector as well. I think this is more or less in general the curve that happens or the curve that is followed in terms of evolution and advancement of an industry. A policy reform generally takes place and then a lot of asset level changes will have happen. I think the first major policy reform, I should say, for the energy sector was done in 1991. Of course, Anil Razdan sir, being a maestro of this sector, should be definitely knowing that whole phase inside out. When the privatization of power sector happened, the generation privatization back in 91, the other major shift that was that had taken place was Electricity Act 2003, which led to further liberalization. I think these were the benchmark events that brought up a lot of change, not just on the policy side, but pushing more towards the data availability, quality data gathering side as well, with the advent of market liberalization and the RAPDRE scheme. So these again going to the policy framework and changes in the policy framework. Once that is all being done, I think we are already at an inflection point. I think whatever this whole phase was a linear growth or a kind of direct correlation growth. But whenever you want an exponential jump, I think that is when the technology has to come in and kind of multiply the whole speed at which everything has been moving. We particularly at this moment stand somewhere, the energy sector is somewhere positioned in midst of technology implementation and then advanced technology optimization. If we see computing and telecom industries, I think they have already gone the cycle and are pretty much ahead in terms of the complete life cycle, growth life cycle. With the computing powers now expanding to so much that if I just compare it the other way, I think I got my first computer back in 1999, wherein my computer was having a hard disk of 10 gigabytes, and the whole township came to my place, all my friend circle, just to see how does a 10 GB hard disk looks like. When it was such a fascinating thing back then. But now we have 1 terabyte of microchip card inside our smartphone. I think that's the kind of change and the scalability that has come up, the processing power that has come up. So that has to be utilized in the best of the interest for not just telecom industry or the energy industry as well. And why in particular energy industry? I think the real importance of energy has now been practically realized and seen by the civilization when we unfortunately have to see and witness this COVID situation. I mean, we all consider hospitals or the medical facilities to be an essential services, but I personally feel they are also able to function at their best only because of an energy support system, a very strong distribution energy support system. Without energy, I think hospitals are also kind of handicapped. But that brings us the importance of the energy sector, the energy system, and uh, of course, now to when you have all the assets at the place, all the data at the place, the exponential jump can always be brought in with the advent of the right technology. Now, technology interfacing can be done in two ways. One would be the automation part of it, which is the ability to process a lot of data, provide analytics, and then leave it up to the user to take a decision. This is one area of operations. The other area of operations is where the machine itself learns the difference between X and the difference between Y, basically the difference between X and Y, and tries to give the right decision which is expected in the benefit of in the benefit of the most optimized way of functioning for that particular instance. Per se, relating to DISCOM operations, what Avdesh was also talking about, I think supplying power at the cheapest cost or the ability to judge what would be the most optimized way of meeting the demand at any particular instance is the biggest use case for any distribution company at this point in time. The other would be following the other would be following at the asset level, which is the threat analytics, which Anil sir was talking about in the introductory remark. In his introductory remark. I think why now? That's the biggest question. Why do we want to jump into it now? Learning from the COVID experience, I think the biggest learning that COVID has given us, although it was very unfortunate that this kind of situation prevailed, preparedness and adaptability. These are the two words that comes up as a crux of this whole situation of the past 4 months. The sooner you are prepared and the sooner you adapt to it, I think that is the way forward to scale up things, and that also brings up scalability as well as getting the best out of that situation and uh, trying to sail through the situation smoothly. With all the regulations and policy level changes that is coming into the energy sector, which is totally pushing the energy segment, energy industry into a new way of business, which would be in no way any lenient compared to the earlier or less complex compared to what it is now. Which day on day it is about to get more and more complex and more stringent. Now the discoms and the utilities have been mandated to operate under a very strict frequency band, And there are a lot of penalties related to deviation, the sign reversal penalty. So with each passing day, something or the other more complex is getting penetrated in the grid. That is, over a period of time, we are about to also witness a massive increase in electric vehicles and the consumption, along with the energy storage system with its charging and discharging, cycles. That is something of a very high importance. The most recent things that have come in the renewable sector as well is the combination of hybrid technology, which is basically thermal plus renewable, whether you talk about, or maybe renewable plus energy storage system, renewable plus battery kind of concept for RTC power or for the peak hour power. This kind of things will keep on, the building up. The only way to sustain or the only way to optimize is by the use of the best of the technology through automation, number one, and through the cognitive index of making the right decision. At what market would be most suitable in order to make the gain the most commercial benefit for the DISCOM or the utility. Once the financial equation of a utility or a distribution company is solved, I think a lot of the other related or the its sub stakeholders will be able to sort their equations as well. The price parity and economies of scale that has to come up over that has also been seen. Let us talk about renewables itself. When the first national solar mission these things started back in time, which was around 2008, 2009. The price of solar was somewhere around 15, 17 rupees per unit, and today we see around 2.5 rupees per unit. So that is the kind of economies also coming up. So, and not just towards the solar assets of the energy sector, but in terms of technology as well. The technology and the cost of technology is also at its parity, and the the asset level, the price parity can also be observed with an enhanced processing power, computing power. I think this is, we are already at the cusp or already at the inflection point from where that exponential jump has to be taken. It is just about, how soon, how fast we can, move towards it by utilizing the technology. AI as a part of the suite of technologies that will transform the sector. I think we'll talk about emerging technologies, which could be one of the AI is just one of those the technologies that we talk about. Apart from that, blockchain has recently been coming up with its own implications on the energy domain, and then the energy sector development, which is the distributed energy resource behind the meter or sensors and IEDs that we talk about. The demand management system, the demand management or rather demand response system, which is the next step of the demand management system. The demand response system is possible only once we start having the demand profile at the meter level, at the consumer meter level. If we start having that data, even if we talk about the state of New Delhi, it is more than 2 crores of 2 crores is the total population of New Delhi. I think 2 crore meters per se. And then that data being fed on a 15-minute basis, the consumption of basically the scheduling system followed in the power domain. With the grid moving more towards 5-minute scheduling system as well, which has been proposed, I think the whole complexity of the architecture or the ecosystem simply gets multiplied by 3. Whenever we talk about as on date, as per 15-minute system, it is like 96 times less. When we talk about a 5-minute system, it is immediately 288 times less. The system has to be reliable, robust, as well as scalable to handle that kind of data processing, which of course nowadays we have the ability of the computing power and all is very rightly in place. However, if we talk about solar rooftops, I think solar rooftop has recently seen one of its major use cases, and once that scales up to a major quantum, that will start impacting the demand for the whole demand, which is supposed to come down to the distribution company. That optimization or that assessment of gap, which is the gap between the availability and the demand. So with a lot of solar rooftop coming into place, the demand would start decreasing for the discount, and the availability would suddenly start increasing or basically start going away from their if it's a non-grid connected distributed generation, basically that takes the demand out of the system. And even if that's a grid connected distributed energy system, that brings in the net metering concept. So that's also an added layer of equation to be balanced by the DISCOM, both from the physical as well as the financial aspect. So this is the future energy system if we talk about the projected, the distributed energy system. So the rooftop actually injecting directly into the grid as well as for the captive consumption of the user. And if that's not consumed, either that goes into the net metering that we're talking about, or that can also be traded as peer-to-peer trading to the other consumer, basically consumer to consumer trading start. That is something where a lot of data security or data sacrosanctness has to be taken care of, which is just not possible through any manual interfacing or manual driven system. I think that definitely calls for a more robust and more automated way of making system that has the ability to optimize it overall. Electric vehicles has its own set of inputs that is coming into the grid, and not just electric vehicles as a consumer from the grid, but rather as an injector to the grid as well, with the concept of V2G or vehicle to grid is what we call. Distributed generation that I have already covered, centralized generation, the TND, the transmission distribution system itself is a very big bottleneck, was very big a bottleneck for quite some time. I think uh, the distribution network is one of the most important, and not just important, rather the most fragile as well to an extent. Whenever, even till date, we see in a lot of cases that whenever there is a stormy condition or rainfall condition, a lot of these distribution the feeders of the distribution lines are being stripped down manually, or they somehow, the breakdown or the outage happens. So I think that has also to be, to an extent that can be managed, or the outage management system can uh, be pulled up using analytics. When we talk about the distribution energy, the distribution system, or the transformer feeder systems, so when we have a drone based and drone based devices which are kind of analyzing these feeders, that which feeder is supposed to get overloaded over the few next few hours or the next few days. This is the demand pattern analysis, and what is the immediate action to be taken at the network management end, or basically diversifying the load or trying to switch the feeder. So these all decisions can help to increase the efficiency of the whole asset management system for the distribution company, not the distribution, rather the transmission networks as well. These drone-based analytics systems are also used for monitoring of solar panels, which expand to a huge area, which is also not possible by making a manual interface or manual kind of check. That again becomes very difficult and very costly affair as well. The next problem that which has been highlighted very recently in terms of integration of so much of renewable capacity, if we have to scale up to capacities like 175 gigawatts over the next few years, a couple of years, I think the renewable rich states are facing a very serious problem of curtailment of renewable energy being done by the distribution companies. So, as per one of the reports I was going through, I think the gap that will be the gap or the basically the trough that will be created in the next 2 years once we achieve that 175 gigawatt of target, that will call for somewhere around 7 to 10 gigawatt of ramp up immediately once the solar generation goes down. So, in any such scenario, and in any such a scenario, basically the distribution company or the system operations overall should have the ability to forecast everything, way before, so that there is ample time or ample margin for the system operations to react, so that the load can be balanced in that way. as well as the ability or the ancillary services to create that backup, to give that backup in case of any shortfall in that kind of capacity. So the right optimization of when this has to be done and at what ramp up rate or ramp down rate it has to be done. I think that is where the cognitive questions will have to play the key role. With all these technologies at their nascent or initial or at most mid stages, wherein we have certain amount of data available, which can be processed or analyzed on all these grounds, I think it is definitely the right time to start doing at least pilots so that we are well prepared for any such occurrence to come up in future and handle it. One of the most important applications of the machine learning or AI-based application, it is AI-based system in the power distribution or power business, energy business, was observed in the last few months, wherein the deployed system with the distribution company, which is the load forecasting and the scheduling optimization system, when the discoms were actually mandated to operate at their minimum work power or minimum manpower, ideally, in the system operations, the control room wherein 4 to 5 people used to operate that grid, that was reduced to only 1 or 2% because of the COVID situation in the last 4 months. I think that is when the whole system got tested on a live basis. That whatever input is coming as the demand forecast and how the grid is supposed to get planned. Whenever a generator is changing the declared capacity, what is the change in the entitlement and what is the overall change in the schedule, what is the revision that has to be sent. So this whole system was automated seamlessly, which gave the possibility of the margin for the system operator, the one person sitting at the control room. It provided the support or the ability to function it just by one single person to supervise or to monitor the whole process, which ideally is not. I'm just imagining a situation wherein there was no automated system to kind of assist you with the day ahead or the intraday demand, the forecast, day ahead, intraday availability from the renewables and the non-renewables, the gap between that and what is the most optimized way of filling that gap. So you either end up into a situation where you keep on paying massive penalties for deviation, or you end up into a situation for not following the universal supply obligation, basically resorting to something like load shedding or power cut. I think even in the 2020 or 21, if we are not able to build a system which is a zero load shedding system, I think that would be really unfortunate situation to come up with or to see with, despite having a capacity of almost 350 gigawatts, the installed capacity or the capacity addition year on year. We are already a surplus supply country, but still there's a lot of gap, or basically still we are unfortunately facing a power cut situation. That is just because of the management between both is not getting done rightly. That would definitely get fixed once we have the right kind of technologies being deployed. The meter data management or the meter level analytics is another big huge data consuming or data crunching zone which has to be catered to apart from the scheduling and forecasting system. So with this, I think the AI for system planning. So in one of the CEW report that says on each unit being sold, the discom has lost more than 80 paisa in the recent years. So this is the kind of the losses that keep on coming up, and then that is also reflecting in terms of the dues on the discoms that we keep on seeing in the report very frequently, which hovers around somewhere around 90,000 to 1 lakh crores. That is the massive value of losses that the discoms are kind of exposed to. So the CEW report also mentions that it was almost 900 crores for the state of Uttar Pradesh alone that has been put up at stake, that got lost only because of not following the merit order correctly. So this is the kind of opportunity which is available if the right kind of technology is being deployed, not just from the management of the schedule, but also from the fuel availability, fuel optimization, adherence to merit order, managing the penalty band. of managing under the operating regulations. Everything has to basically work smoothly. For all these things to happen, be it the demand forecast or be it the generation forecast, the biggest or the most critical input is the weather forecasting system. With I mean, over the past few years, a lot of technologies have come in terms of radar and satellite image processing, which is exactly where we are very deeply working into. I mean, let's talk about a solar generation plant. If that solar generation plant is a 50 megawatt plant, the area is into multiple acres of land. And whenever there is a cloud patch moving over that plant, so for as long as that cloud portion is moving across the cloud patch is moving over the plant, it will keep on bringing down the generation for whatever amount of area that cloud is covering. So analyzing a cloud, and if it's a precipitable cloud, a non-precipitable cloud, what is the speed at which the cloud is moving? What is the wind speed at that particular time, or point in time? How long will it take for the cloud to pass through the complete plant? Will it kind of rain? Is there a possibility to precipitate in between? So this is the next level of analytics, using all the weather and satellite imagery data. So that is the next application of hardcore machine learning, hardcore neural network, or basically the cognitive decision making theory. So once the weather challenge gets solved, a lot of it in terms of forecasting or accurate forecasting per se, I would say, that will get resolved to a very high extent. Once weather forecasting is sorted, all the other components up to the trade optimization system gets improved to a very high accuracy level. These are some of the advantages, and impact and benefit that we are talking about in terms of using of technology for the new energy businesses, which is not just commercial but highly strategic as well if you see in the long run. Certain other areas that we have been very deeply working is the failure probability modeling. When I say failure probability modeling, I think one stakeholder, one massive stakeholder of the ecosystem is the DISCOM side, which I just covered, and the other would be the thermal generators, which are kind of getting into a distress mode. Once we have all the data available, once we have all the asset available, the next step is technology implementation, which has also been done at the generation level. Above that is the highest point per se would be the advanced technology implementation and the complete optimization of the asset. So whether we talk about the theft detection or theft analytics, that's of course one of our products, which is the theft detection system using feeder level data, feeder pattern behavior, feeder analytics, which has already been deployed with a lot of discoms out here, a couple of discoms, and has been given successful output. The dynamic energy management, the big data analytics, the smart energy meters, and the distributed energy resources. So this all covers the smart meters coming into place, the meter data analytics, and the rooftop solar system. Outage detection and prediction, that's what I was earlier talking about. Whenever some system is about to go into outage, or if for the benefit of the system to save any kind of malfunctioning or any kind of accident, if there is an outage situation, a force outage or a planned outage has to be suggested. So that should also start coming from the machine learning driven algorithms itself. So whether if we analyze the sensors of a transformer, so if the transformer oil is getting beyond a certain temperature, there is a possibility of its failure. So that has to be reported right on time at a central monitoring station so that the right actions can be taken. Similarly, from the demand side, if the demand is expected to increase in some particular area, and if any particular asset or any particular transformer or feeder is expected to get overloaded, I think that kind of a network management planning is definitely the next step of efficiency improvement overall. Then we have thermal imaging and trackers that are used for all these, the transmission and distribution network system management, as well as the solar the panel management system. Then the demand response system, which is ideally coming back to the same meter level analytics or the consumer meter analytics. We have the once that is there, I think the distribution system or the distribution operator can start suggesting the consumers to manage their demand, or basically react to some kind of a, basically peak shaving techniques can always be suggested by the distribution companies, and then providing certain incentives if that those kind of instructions are getting followed. Digital twin is the next breakthrough in terms of network management for a distribution company. I think network planning would be the right word, not really management. Whenever a new network planning or a network system is being planned, although this is basically a simulator, when we talk about digital twin, it is actually creating a exact replica of whatever system you have planned, exact simulated replica of the complete system on a real-time basis with the real data, and tries to observe its impact and basically what all occurrences occurrences can happen. So this gives a very intense output. I think the SolidWorks or the HyperMesh kind of softwares which are very efficient in this kind of a dynamic analysis or dynamic testing, dynamic simulation. So I think this is also one of the applications of a lot of automation and machine learning. So we have been working on creating the first of its kind, network planning based digital twin system, which will actually create the replica of the network plan, as well as observe what for the next few years, what is the kind of load or the consumption pattern or consumption profile of the consumers that will vary over the next 10 years, let's say, so for a decade or so. And basis that, what is the kind of impact that may come onto this distribution network system. So this all simulation can be done on a digital basis, and further preparations can be created on that way. These are the three major areas that come up as a challenge or needs to be addressed when we talk about an automated AI machine learning driven system. All it calls for is huge amount of data, not just data, but rather clean and usable data. The kind of validated data, uh, removing bias from training data and for AI algorithms. That is the biggest challenge. I think whenever we have data, there are a lot of garbage values as well, or incorrect values as well. So that processing that is a major challenge that is getting created. Number one, and number two, building trust with the customer. Because as Abdesh was highlighting, these are very sensitive data sets. Once you have the meter level data, you can kind of interpret a lot of the consumer behavior as the paying power, ability, and a lot of personal information as well. But then I think that following the best practices is possibly the only way to ensure following the right practices, very strict compliances related to data security. That is exactly what is being followed by us in terms of building new products and new services. The next comes is the design thinking. These are the areas which are being explored for one of its kind. I think whatever products are coming up, be it demand forecasting, be it the automated scheduling system, I think that itself is a product which evolves over a period of time because nobody knows what exactly is required at the end. So thinking it from a very consumer perspective or a comprehensive perspective, so that it goes for a long run is very important, because time and again it's just not possible to keep on tweaking into these the softwares or these tools. So once made, it has to be made very holistically made. I think that is the complexity the customers will also have to appreciate, and that is the kind of appreciation that has to come from the service provider as well, in order to build the trust. So the solution is the building a cognitive model, and from the customer side, I think sharing of the data with a trust that the data will be kept confidential and following all the best practices. I think once these things are solved, especially from a government point of view, because at the moment all the distribution related data is all owned by the government organization. Once that data fluidity starts happening, a lot of analytics and value-added products can be further created. This is a quick brief about Climate Connect. We started as a machine learning company back in 2011, and recently got acquired by this company called Renew Power, which is India's largest renewable power producer. A lot of the swings around in between to build the price forecasting product at the first, and then demand forecasting and scheduling products later. So mostly comprising of machine learning and AI experts in the company who have been building around these cognitive models. So I personally believe, it would be an unfair expectation to have if we are expecting a different output just by giving the same input. I think that's one thing I personally believe, and that is the need. That is where that is the where innovation has to start off. That is the trigger point of an innovative system. That if you want something different, you have to give something different as input. Only then the output can be different. It is for time for us to explore the substituting for our ability to build something which is different. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Saurabh. I think the three presentations have been excellent and they've given so much, I think, data that you almost, we analyzed the sector threadbare and went deep inside it. In fact, almost 11 years ago, I was advising or consulting an American energy management company which tried to make a foray into India. And they thought that they could make an energy management a business. But unfortunately, the system, you see, had not yet got rid of its malpractices. And when, honestly, when it was discovered that when people can manage their energy consumption by managing the surrounding system and the eco environment, why get into an analyst? So, unfortunately, that company, I think, folded its business and went away after 5 years of toil and trouble. But I honestly look at an opportunity. Here is what I want you to react. How do you see that energy management companies can come into play? Do you think they will only come into play when we have multiple choices of supply? That's multiple energy providers in a system. Way back in 2000 in Toronto, it was tried by an energy advisor come lawyer, Mr. Budd. He wanted to give each household the power it wanted based upon some analytics solution. It was not very sophisticated, but well, he gave up after, I'm told, about 3 or 4 years. But that, of course, was almost 20 years ago. What I'm looking at today is that maybe when we are able to have multiple players or multiple choice of a supplier, then the energy management advisors or consultants can come into play. And each, you see, large, I should say, body of consumers, say the housing societies, the blocks, the apartment blocks, you can probably look at advising them and their constituents just to have tax consultants. That's my reading. I just wanted to get a feel of you practitioners because maybe it's not very fair for me to make a projection, but there were some questions. I thought that, why the ESCO model has not succeeded. And I think going beyond the ESCO model, I would say energy management. Just as you have a tax advisor, you have some other health advisor. Here you can have somebody as your energy advisor and who can guide you, go down to changing your gadgetry, all the analytics that you're talking about. He has access to all that functioning. He has a diagnostics and he can probably advise. What do you think would be the appropriate stage for these people to get? Avdesh, would you hazard a guess? Or Saurabh, would like to do it?
We just again the last one, last sentence I think I got. Understand? Hello.
Little better. Go ahead. Who's speaking? Please raise your hand or finger. Who wants to answer? Okay, Mr. Anand, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that why ESCO model is not popular as yet. The one of the reason that you already mentioned, the significant point today in the country today is that earlier there was no technology aspects to measure and verify the whole process. Number two, there was a lot of gap between technical payback estimates and technical commercial ROI calculation. This was, a significant factor that, most of the ESCO model was getting failed. And number three is the last decade or few years back, the ESCO model was being not been seriously considered, from the financial institutions. There was no much security given for the from the regulatory. I think current the way forward, I think there is a lot of significant impact from the regulatory and also from financial institutions who's come forward in order to fund these projects. And also, the most importantly, the customers are willing to now take the that risk ability with adopting the new technologies and new services. So there is a huge scope for the ESCO model, and it will be definitely a benchmark for the way forward of Indian economy and Indian industry.
Thank you. Would the other two panelists like to contribute? Avdesh,
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Extremely sorry for that. Now, if you look at what is happening, okay, now, so if you look at 10 year back versus 10 year now, from now, things are a lot different. And what has brought that difference also the energy mix, which is changing. Now, think about it. As a customer, energy is the only basket where I don't choose what is my consumption basket. It's pretty much the discom whose meter I'm connected to determines that energy basket. So the two potential problem here as an end customer, if I want to, for example, say that, okay, fine, I want to go green. Now, regulation already allows you to do that, and you can have a net metering or gross metering or what have you. So I can have all of those today are possible because distributed generation itself has become a reality. Now, when that becomes a reality, whether you have multiple supplier within periphery or not, in reality, you already have this new element of energy, which is almost as good as a new supplier. So any which was in the new world, you can actually, these kind of model can start working, whereby, for example, as a society, one may choose to say that, okay, fine, you know what, we are a green society. We would like to consume, for example, 70% renewable, not more than 30% conventional. Okay, we have our own energy efficiency things already in place, because all these technology, when you aggregate, it allows for that actual kind of things to start working, where customer can choose his energy basket, and the discom is used for wheeling. His distribution network is used for wheeling. So yes, the new model may emerge, just that the shape of that model could be a little different. And now the resistance could be less because of this new form of energy, any which is sitting in your network, which is renewable in nature. So the new model can emerge of ISCO.
Saurabh, would you like to give your views also? We didn't hear you at that time. There was some audio disturbance towards the end. I think you need to unmute yourself,
Yes, yes,
Saurabh.
correct. Sir, I think ESCO is expected to find its place, with the upcoming situation wherein a lot of utility scale solar and wind, or basically a lot of utility scale renewable projects are also coming up. I think that is where ESCO model will find its place back again, which earlier was not getting talked about. I think it could not really scale up the way it was supposed to. But with a lot of new, the, the, the supply side basically, or the consumption side changing, not just for the domestic consumers, but for at an industrial level as well, the C&I level as well. I think if that goes around well, ESCO models should definitely find its place back again in the system over the FEC for the next decade, the 10 years. Yes, Mr. Anand.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a point. Once you complete, Sarah.
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
To add another critical point, like what Mr. Avdesh said, today there is a simple payback system for in the ESCO model which can be implemented. Earlier, the energy was cheap and not many people were considering the factor, and there was other instances which were been considered for the ESCO implementation. But currently, the industries are suffering, with various reasons of competition and various reasons of, alternate. So, but the ESCO can actually be a game changer, by, having collaboration with the funding institution and the technology provider. It can enroll the industry itself. So I would see ESCO can be a key driver, for our Make in India perspective, and also in order to enhance the economy of India.
I think the other question that is popping up on the screen is that whether the PowerPoint presentations can be made available. I think the chamber may have to devise a method by which, if these presenters do not object, to make these available, because this would be useful dissemination in any case. If the presenters agree, then the chamber can probably work on it.
Absolutely fine.
I don't have any
That's
problem.
fine from our side as
Freeze. Yeah.
we can share.
Saurabh, what about you?
Yes, sir, we can share. It's totally fine from us.
Okay, so we leave it to Serene to handle the rest.
Right. Sure.
Any other question? Because
Yes, sir, will do. So there's one more question by Mr. Jaideep Naha. He's from Siemens. What do you think is the requirement of industrial robotic applications in the Indian energy sector, which will obviously use AI?
Avdesh, you want to answer?
Sure. In fact, one of the first one, if you think of from the distribution perspective, would be, for example, your substation management. That can be fully automated. It's a robot who could do every activity, and today it is possible. You can actually have the complete this thing augmented itself. Any such substations, which could be of any scale or be a bit of any scale, and can be controlled remotely, and the robot can pretty much perform every task that we want it to perform. Because any which way, I mean, you can recreate that AR of the substation at the control room. So you can pretty much control. So it's almost like you can pretty much control that robot to fix whatever you want. And then, of course, there are the other things needed to give that kind of intelligence to the robot is already available. So robot is just, in a way, an operator who is operating on all those intelligence. And you're controlling through this AR control room that you have somewhere.
I think robots are already being deployed at
Already, yeah.
several solar sites as well. So a lot of these solar
For
panels
maintenance.
the cleaning of these solar panels and everything is already being implemented, done by the robots.
Yeah. So in fact, those are the obvious use cases, and even the more complex one, where they think that when there's a need for human intervention, for example, detecting a fault and then correcting that fault in a substation, for example, which probably is the most complex task. If I talk from the distribution network perspective, a robot can pretty much do that, and it can probably do a better job than a human, right? And not only that, taking care of many other things. For example, the risk associated with the job is taken care of. You don't have those elements, so it's also more human to have robots doing those kind of activities instead of human doing those activities. And today it is actually done. So there's no technology challenge there at all. Similarly, I mean, your equipments and your line maintenance, all of that should be done by robots. We should not be having these linemen carrying all these activities. That should be done by robots.
I think point is well made.
Yeah.
In almost 2 decades back, you see in Austria and the Alps,
Yeah.
they were running some of their hydro stations.
Yeah.
Actually, through automation.
Absolutely
Because
right.
they didn't want to locate somebody there just sitting. You see, water is going to flow and turbines are going to run.
Right.
We unfortunately have not been able to build those kind of cascade hydro power systems in the country, though we have the streams and we can do it. We just think of very large projects, you see, very large ones. You see, when we thinking of the micro hydro projects in due course of time, I think those could probably be robotized in due course of time. But I leave you professionals with a word of caution. You see, more and more that automation is brought into the systems, particularly electrically controlled systems or electric control stations. There's a greater risk of sabotage.
Right. You're right.
So we have to be very, very careful in what we robotize, unless you see we're able to ensure total security and surveillance, you see.
Yes.
Outside, tomorrow's warfare will not be conventional warfare. It will be the cyber warfare. And the electrical control stations will be the prime targets, in my view. So we all have to be a little careful on that.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's so much. Very well said.
Yeah. And that is why we must have indigenous technologies on these things. One of the reasons why.
And you see, foolproof. It has to be security proofed also. So whatever solutions that you are providing, we will have to have a security certifying agency.
Right.
And again, when we delve deeper into it, the sourcing of your components will become extremely important and will become a subject of surveillance.
Right.
In fact, Mr. Anil, that's why the Industry 4.0 as a major threat is a cyber security.
Precisely.
And that's going to be, some kind of disruption. I think only if they adopt that, then I think the rest everything follows back.
If you could see, in fact, the first time we got a little conscious of it was, when the 2K situation came up.
Right.
That we realized, you see, at that time that there is, when the control panels and everything have to be ready for this transition to 2K. Luckily, there was no disruption. But we began to realize that there can be a devil within the system also.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Serene, you have with you?
Serene, I saw somebody talking about...
No, sir. Anything? Yes? Yes, Mr. Bjorn?
Anand?
Yeah, I saw some questions. Somebody was asking about Rubik's. Why is it not popular for the energy managers? So, should I answer for that?
Please. Go ahead. No, please.
If you noted it. Go ahead, Anand.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Chaudhary asked a question about why Rubik's Urja sensors can be a good device for the energy managers and why it's not popular. I mean, it's glad that the question was been raised. Definitely, there are multiple sensors like Rubik's Urja is available in the industry. It is just that we need to adopt and showcase the primary objective of the customer needs. Typically, the adaptation has been started by the industries, be it mid-size, small, or the large-scale industries, where we've been able to showcase the results. Hopefully that it becomes much more mandatory perspective for every industries to adopt the device level management system, be it from Rubik's, Urja, or from anybody. But the critical aspect is that every industry should make that as a mandatory aspects from the to monitor device level.
Thank you. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we can thank the panelists for a very, very stimulating and a very, I should say, very absorbing level of discussion, very practical, down to earth, and also showing the road to the future. As I said earlier on, maybe at the DISCOM award functions, we will have a special session on this series.
Yes, sir. Sure,
This
sir.
can be
I have made a note.
the technology pointer for the future. And since the DISCOMs would be present there, we could circulate the subject in advance and probably ask for a few topics which they would like the panelists to address. Because we are wanting to promote technology and business. And I think these gentlemen, their time is very precious. They're not unemployed like a person like me. So they would, for them, time is money. So we should try and crystallize the questions, see if there are technology solutions, and that session could lead to B2B meetings subsequently.
Sure, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Anand, Avdesh, and Saurabh, for a very enlightening discussion. And thank you, Serene, for having invited me. And
Thank you, Razan, sir, for this very engaging session. And I again thank all the sponsors, QNET and Climate Connect, for helping us make this happen.
Thanks, Serene, for hosting it, and thanks, Mr. Razdan. It's fantastic to always associate with you to enlighten ourselves. And
Yes.
and you should never say that you are unemployed. You are the one who are actually creating the employment in an industry.
He keeps telling me that, Siri, now you please keep me out of all this. I am old now. Let me do something else. And I keep pulling him back into this.
I think you should make him the bestest investor.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, all this. Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you all. Bye.